Hi, and welcome to my house. Right now I'm just in my room filming this. So my first video, I want to share my experience, how I was able to buy this house at the age of 26, living in California, and during this whole housing boom. I want to show you my experience and my journey on how I was able to afford this. And I want to show you the steps that I took and really like the events leading to it. So I know in this video, it's gonna look like I'm showing off. Maybe it is, but it's mostly intended to show the reality of what it's like, going through the steps of buying a house, especially when you're young, and show the reality of like the whole housing market as it is, or as it was currently at the time of me purchasing it. So again, this is just my experience and my story of how I was able to purchase this house. How you interpret it, whether or not you think I'm showing off or not is up to you. But this is just reality. That was how I was able to buy it. So the first thing I did, and the first thing that you all have to do, I know again what I'm gonna give is like pretty much common sense, advice here, is that you need a job. So right away, when I graduated from college, I worked. I was able to land a job, and that paid me $63,000. And through time and like some promotions and some bonuses, that salary went from $63,000 to $69,000. After a job switch, I went from $69,000 to $75,000. $75,000 through some bonuses and some salary increases. That $75,000 went to $78,000, and now it is currently $82,000. So currently, I'm making $82,000 a year. And that's just from me working. So from 24 to 26, right now I'm actually 27, so my birthday passed, but I was able to buy this house at 26. Just from about 2 years, I was able to, accumulate money just from working a job. So again, just, common sense things, have some sort of income. And of course, the higher the pay, the better. So if you're making like $100,000 right off the bat, then, the process of you accumulating money is much more faster than it is for someone who's making less. Now, the next thing I did after, getting a job is that you have to get that mindset, you have to get that mindset of saving up for a down payment and your closing costs. And I'll give you all those numbers later on in the video because I want to be really transparent here. The closing cost was about 3% of the house. Mine in total was about $70,000. So yes, you basically need $70,000 in cash just to afford this closing costs and the down payment. Again, I'll go into the numbers more specifically later on in the video. So after you work, yeah, you need to save money. This is what you need to do because again, reality says you need to be able to pay this off. So if you don't have that mindset of saving up for down payment, then you're never going to be able to buy a house. So how was I able to save up this much? Well, because after college, I worked and I was pretty frugal in the first place. That's just my personality. I still have that college mindset where, you just live off way below your means. I live with like family members and roommates, so I'm able to split the cost from my rent. Previously, before buying this house, I think I was only paying like around $800 a month. Kept my groceries and expenses really, really low. So if you can like budget your life, plan ahead before, making a big purchase, then you're like way ahead of the game. So basically just pretend like you're living in college for the rest of your life, or like, you're still a student. Live as if you're only gonna eat ramen and like, stack up on roommates because that'll help you save so much money. But I know that's not gonna work for everyone. Still, that's what I did, okay? I'm just telling you my story, my experiences. The next step is to get an approval letter from a lender. So what that means is that you have to go to a bank, that's your lender, who's gonna lend you the rest of the amount, like the loan, the mortgage, because you can't afford to buy the whole house, outright. So what they'll do is they'll run a background check on you, like, they'll check your income statements and your credit score to see, is this person really reliable? Is he gonna be able to like pay me back? So they'll look at your job and say, okay, so he has a job, so that means he's making income. He has a good credit score, so that means that he's able to pay off, his debt. He seems reliable, so he's not gonna run away and take all your money. So once you get your approval letter, that just proves to the lender, your bank, that you are a reliable person. So after you get this approval letter, that's when you're able to really shop around. So without this approval letter, you basically cannot prove that you can buy this house or can afford this house. So that's why it's so important to get this approval letter before you start shopping around. I mean, that's what happened to me. I just went to a house, looked around just for fun, and then the realtor just went up to me and says, can I see your approval letter? And I was just thinking like, what is that? I don't even know what approval letter is. And so that was like embarrassing to me because I didn't know anything about house shopping. And so he basically rejected me or kicked me out saying, you need to like get your approval letter. You need to prove that you can actually afford to buy a house. So I went home embarrassed, and then I did some research looking up like what is an approval letter and how do you get one. The steps are pretty simple. It just does take some paperwork. Again, you just show them like your income statements and your bank statements and basically prove that you have money and can afford to buy a house. So be careful though. The only thing about the approval letter is that this proves that you can afford to take out a large amount of loans, like a large amount of money. But the thing is, you don't want to take the full amount. So just because you're approved to take out a loan of $1 million doesn't mean that you should take out and buy a $1 million house. Don't let that bite you in the butt later on in the future. Don't try to show off. Just realize, stick to your budget. Stick to your numbers that you had beforehand. I could only afford this much amount of house. Don't go out and say, oh, he gave me like a $2 million approval letter. That means I'm gonna go out and buy the full $2 million amount. Don't do that. So this brings me up to my next point. This is when you start searching for houses that you can actually afford, okay? Again, the keyword is afford. Going back to the approval letter, don't take out the full amount of loan because that's going to really hurt you in the future. I got approved for like an $800,000 house, but I did not go out and buy an $800,000 house. I bought my current $630,000 house. Okay, so that's way lower than what it should be, even though they approved me for that amount. You don't want to be taking out that amount because you got to pay it all later on. Once you find the perfect house, that's when you do the next step, which is to put in an offer. Typically, you want to put in an offer that they asked for, so you are the buyer and someone else is selling the house for a certain price. Of course, you as a buyer, you want to buy it for lower than the amount. And of course, as a seller, they want to sell it for a higher amount. But if you want to be competitive, you will basically put the amount that they asked for. So if this guy's selling it for like $600,000 and you say, you know what, I'm willing to spend $600,000, then I will give you the full amount, whatever you ask for. The downside to this current housing market is that what they ask for might be like, say, $600,000. Some people are so willing to spend money and get this house, they will say, okay, I don't care. Like, I know what you're asking for is $600,000, but I want to be so competitive. I want to make sure that I get this house that I'll give you $630,000, you know, an extra $30,000 to make it not like a headache. You know, I want to make sure that I get it, that, you know, the next guy down there will not get it. Because he might be wanting to buy it for like $590,000, but I'm going to buy it for $630,000, you know, as a seller, that's, you know, that's very enticing. So from my experience, this house that I bought, they were asking for $650,000. And I know what you're thinking. How did you buy it for $630,000? Like, that's $20,000 lower than what they're asking for. Well, that was because that was all we can afford. That's all we were willing to give up. They were asking for $650,000. We put in an offer of $630,000. So again, we as a buyer, we are at a disadvantage. And we were competing against other people. The only good side to this situation, and I'd say it's very, very lucky of us, was that we were competing against other people who were sort of giving them a headache. So for example, we showed up in person and we actually met the homeowners. You know, we talked, we looked around the house, they gave us a tour, and they noticed that we were very nice and friendly and also pretty young. And the other competitors, like, they were very rude. So they offered, you know, the amount, $650,000, but then they were saying, oh no, you gotta fix this. You gotta do this and that. And that just gave them a headache. So yes, the homeowners would get an extra $20,000, but that would delay the amount because now they got to fix the roof for some reason. Now they got to fix the tiles. It was like, why would we have to do that? We just want to get rid of the house. Why do we have to do so much work just to, like, please the buyer? We could just go to another person who doesn't give us a rude remark or, you know, a headache to sell this house. We just want to sell this house as soon as possible. So it really depends on the situation. So it's not like a set in stone process saying that this will always happen. It depends on the buyer because, you know, we are still humans. We still have events in life happen to us. Fortunately or unfortunately, the seller had to move out of the house as soon as possible. He's actually leaving the country because of the whole pandemic. So he didn't have time to fix all these things. He didn't have time to fulfill the requests of the other buyer. And so for us, we were just like little kids basically saying, you know, all we can afford is $630,000 and, you know, we're willing to buy it for this much. You don't have to fix anything at all, we'll just take it as it is. So that gave him less headache and he's like, you know, these guys are pretty nice. That's when you move on to the next step, and that's really just a lot of paperwork. And this is when you know for sure, set in stone, what you're doing. Like what you're dealing with, what you're gonna be paying for the next, you know, 30 years or so. So now this is probably what you're coming for, like what are the details? So currently my house costs $630,000. My interest rate that I locked in from my lender was 2.685. So that's really, really low. Next is the down payment. So weirdly, I put a 9% down payment on this house. So 9% of $630,000 is this number. If I were to put a 10% down payment, that would actually change the loan type. So for some reason, it would make our interest higher if we put a 10% down payment. So we were like, that doesn't make sense. It's weird how it happens, but even so, we put 9% because it made sense to keep that 2.6% rather than like 2.8 or 3%. But that means because we didn't put 20%, that means we're paying PMI. Private mortgage insurance. Our PMI cost is $150 every single month if we were to keep this, you know, payment for the next 30 years. So now you know the numbers, you know how much I paid for interest, you know how much I paid for down payment. If you plug it all into the calculator, that means I am paying roughly about $3,200 a month on my mortgage for the next 30 years. You're probably thinking like $3,200, like that's a lot of money. You gotta be super rich to do that. I'm not rich, I'm just really frugal. have a good job, handle my money pretty well, and I am still living with like family members that can, split the rent. So this is not like I'm showing off again, because I'm not paying the full amount of the mortgage. I'm just saying again how I was able to buy this house, have it under my name, and then still be able to live and afford this house. So that's reality. That's my journey towards buying this house. I felt like I rambled way too much, but this is just the steps and process, and like again, my story, my experience on how I was able to buy this house at the age of 26, living in Los Angeles, California, despite this whole crazy housing market. So it's going to be different for every situation, every person out there, and every single location. But right now it's happening everywhere in the whole like United States, where every single house is just like skyrocketing. So if you didn't jump in and like catch the train, then you sort of missed out. And of course I was scared of the whole housing market crash too, but it doesn't seem like the train's stopping anytime soon. So I'm glad I was able to board it and ride it. And that's my life. I hope you enjoyed the story and my journey. And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.